Imagine you're a bird gliding over the island of Lionwood. You see the town and castle nestled in the valley below. A breeze carries you west above small farms, round foothills, and up, over grey mountains crowned with snow. Then down again, swooping across an evergreen forest to the blustery coast. Waves fold in a rush of sound, whisper across the sand, then draw like a deep breath back into the sea. You return on the wind, glide through the tall pine, and find a cabin at the edge of the forest. This is the home of Madeline the falconer, who trains great birds to be companions for kings and queens. The falconer lives here with her young son Nathaniel, who is just now opening the front door and stepping onto the porch. Nathaniel is light and spry, with a glint in his eye, an earnest look, and a curious mind. Nathaniel has a habit of looking up. He loves everything above his head: sun, moon, stars, mountains, treetops, and most of all, birds. Today, when he looks up, he sees misty grey clouds covering the sky, pressed into thick rows, like folds in an old blanket. He smiles, wondering if winter will come early this year. Beside Nathaniel and Madeline's cabin is an enormous aviary. This is where their precious falcons live while they undergo their royal training. Like he does every morning, Nathaniel slips into the aviary. A layer of gravel covers the ground inside. His boots crunch. Large pine branches are attached to the walls. Water drips from an iron pump into a stone basin. "It's me," Nathaniel whispers. 3 falcons, perched on the branches, nod their heads as if to say, "We heard you coming." Each is a different kind of falcon, but they share the same proud quality. Nathaniel knows that falcons never surrender their wild hearts. Unlike a dog or cat, they do not become part of the family. They offer respect and friendship, but they belong only to themselves and to the sky. Except, of course, for Nathaniel's own bird, a falcon named Feather. Nathaniel raised Feather from a fledgling, and she is quite satisfied to belong to Nathaniel. Unlike the falcons in the aviary, Feather doesn't need a separate space. She's happy with a perch in Nathaniel's room. As Nathaniel begins his daily routine of raking the gravel and pumping fresh water, he takes the time to visit with the birds. "Hello, Rusty," he says to a kestrel, the most colorful of all falcons. Small as a dove, with wings that are brownish red on top and slate blue on the bottom. "Hello, Tawny," Nathaniel says. Tawny is a Merlin falcon. Her feathers are brushed with every shade of brown, from tan to cinnamon to chocolate. "Hello, Silver," Nathaniel says, turning to a gerfalcon, the biggest of all falcons. Silver is larger than the other 2 combined. His dark gray feathers are edged in white. He looks like he's wearing a knitted sweater. As Nathaniel works, he murmurs his thoughts out loud. His voice relaxes the birds, and their attention relaxes him. He talks about being so far from town where all his friends live. Even on horseback, it's a 4-hour ride, so they rarely visit more than once a week. It's not that he's lonely out here on the western edge of the island. Well, maybe he used to be, a little, but not anymore, now that Feather has become his best friend. When the gravel is raked and the water refreshed, Nathaniel returns to the cabin. In his bedroom, he finds Feather resting on her perch by the window. She is a young peregrine falcon. Her head and wings are grayish-blue, like the winter sea. Her chest is tan and white, and striped with brown feathers. And her quick, dark eyes are set in a thin band of yellow skin. From the doorway, she looks like she's wearing gold-rimmed glasses. Nathaniel scratches the side of her neck. Feather gently presses his finger in her yellow beak, the way a friend might squeeze your hand to say hello. After my mom, Nathaniel thinks, I love Feather most of all. And since peregrine falcons live a long time, Nathaniel is certain they'll still be best friends when he's a grown man. And to a young boy, that feels like forever. Nathaniel pulls on a heavy coat. The shoulders are sewn with thick buckskin. Feather likes to ride on Nathaniel's shoulder. The padded coat protects Nathaniel's skin from her talons. Ready to fly? He says. With one huff of her wings, Feather hops from the perch and settles on Nathaniel's shoulder. Nathaniel waves goodbye to his mother Madeline, who's hard at work stitching new leather gloves. Then he's outside in the cold ocean air, up the dirt road, and into the forest. And so it was that a boy and a falcon began a journey of the heart, without even knowing that a journey had begun. And what they chose to do next would change their friendship forever. Nathaniel looks up through the trees at the low gray clouds. Last week, it rained every day. Madeline still took the other falcons out to fly, but Nathaniel and Feather had stayed warm and dry in the cabin. Now Feather bobs her head up and down in anticipation. She chirps and looks left, then chirps and looks right. Nathaniel has never seen her so excited. Soon the forest opens onto a field. On 3 sides, the wide space is walled in by trees. The 4th side is open to the stone-colored sea. This is where Madeline trains the falcons, and where Nathaniel has been training Feather. The art of falconry goes back thousands of years. It's a mysterious partnership. Falcons fly free and hunt for their own food. But they also patrol fields and farms, chasing away flocks of birds who eat the grain. When the falcon, with its wild heart, hears the falconer's whistle and chooses to return, the falconer feels blessed. Sky and earth become one. Normally, a falconer like Nathaniel would wear a leather gauntlet on his arm, where the falcon would perch. Normally, a falcon like Feather would wear a leather leash on her leg, which would be tied to the gauntlet until it was time to fly. Madeline says the leash helps them learn to come back. But Nathaniel isn't worried. Feather would never leave him. He raised her from a fledgling, and they were best friends, after all. As soon as they step onto the field, Feather becomes very still. She stares at the ocean as if the horizon is calling her name. Nathaniel whistles 3 specific notes, which are Feather's cue to fly. Right on cue, she unfolds her grayish-blue wings and rises into the air. Nathaniel follows her ascent against the green trees, then the brown mountains, then the gray sky. They haven't been training for a very long time, but Feather always follows the same routine. She glides over the forest, searching for food, hangs in the sky, bathing in the wind, then returns when Nathaniel calls. But today, Feather doesn't do that. She flies toward the ocean, soaring on her capable wings. Nathaniel watches her, curious, then confused, until she's over the water. Her flight path doesn't look like a falcon exploring, but a falcon leaving. Concerned, Nathaniel whistles. Feather keeps flying. She'll be out of range soon. His mom has told him stories about falcons who decide, all of a sudden, to just fly away. Nathaniel whistles louder as his heart beats faster. By now, Feather is as small as a sparrow in the distance. But Nathaniel sees her head tilt and knows she heard his call. He holds his breath as she flies on and on and on, until finally she turns, curving back toward land. When Nathaniel feels Feather's weight on his shoulder, he looks up into her eyes. She seems as confused as he is, as if neither of them understand what just happened. Nathaniel doesn't know what to say. Before he can ask what's wrong, a few white specks drift between them. By the time they get home, snow is falling so slow and heavy, the whole world is hushed. Nathaniel can't even hear the nearby waves, only the crashing of his own heart. That night, Madeline tucks Nathaniel into bed. Feather rests on her perch by the window. The candle in Madeline's hand casts a warm cave of light around mother, son, and bird. Somewhere in the cabin, a clock chimes. Madeline places her hand on Nathaniel's chest. "When you were little," she says, "I put my hand right here. It made you feel safe, and you fell right asleep. I suppose you're too old for that now." They talk about what happened that day in the forest. Madeline explains that some falcons need to migrate. This is Feather's first winter. Perhaps she feels the instinctive call to move south, to find her own home and build a nest. "But this is your home," Nathaniel says, reaching out to Feather. Feather leans close and gently pinches his finger. Before Madeline gets up to leave, she kisses her son on the forehead. "You'll never be too old for that," she says. And now the room is cozy and dark, except for the square of moonlit window. Feather is silhouetted against the gray light. Behind her Nathaniel watches the snow fall and fall. In the morning, the clouds are gone, as if they themselves had been made of snow and fallen to the earth. The sky is as blue and clear as ice. A foot of sparkling powder covers the ground and the aviary roof. The cabin is wrapped in white. As the tide rolls in, the waves push snow farther up the beach, revealing dark gold sand. As they tend to their household chores, Madeline suggests moving Feather into the aviary with the other falcons. That would ensure she doesn't fly away when Nathaniel isn't with her. If she's feeling the call to migrate, a new home and 3 feathered friends might be enough. Not able to bear the winter nights without his best friend, Nathaniel begins to spend his free time with Feather in the aviary. The other falcons respect Nathaniel, but this is their house. He feels their proud tolerance of his presence. Silver, the large gerfalcon, stares at him as if to say, "Do you not have a home of your own?" But Feather grows more restless each day. Nathaniel is certain that her instincts are pulling her south. "What are we going to do?" he asks. Feather bumps her head against his hand. He scratches her neck. And then an idea rises up out of Nathaniel's heart. What if they go to the southern end of the island where it never snows? Where it's always warm? Would that be far enough? He shares his plan with Madeline. She likes the idea. A compromise between boy and bird, she says. Madeline has always raised her son to be on friendly terms with nature, so she feels confident he can spend a night out on his own. He knows how to set up camp, build a fire, and forage for food. So the next day, Nathaniel saddles a gentle reddish-brown horse named Pinecone. Madeline helps him pack his supplies. With Feather on his shoulder, he waves goodbye, promises to be back the next day, and rides into the forest. And so it was that a boy who needed a bird to stay on an island, and a bird who needed to fly away across the sea, traveled south together, hoping to find what both their hearts desired. The woods are hushed and white. Snow covers every bough. It's like riding a horse through a forest of Christmas trees. The cold breeze carries the scent of fresh pine. A few hours later, they're through the mountain pass and moving down the soft hills. Nathaniel smiles at the town of Lionwood, small as a coin in the palm of the valley. The castle is a rose-colored pebble in the morning light. Feather pecks at her leg. For the first time, Nathaniel has tied a leash to Feather. The other end is knotted to his jacket. "I'm sorry," he tells her, offering his thumb. Feather pinches it. Nathaniel can tell by the gentle pressure that she understands. They stop to rest in a small grove. Nathaniel looks up. The stained glass sky shines through silver branches. Feather stretches her head toward the blue. When Nathaniel looks down again, he sees a bear ambling through the trees. Her brown eyes are sleepy, and rolls of brown fur cover her shaggy body. She stops when she notices them. "Oh, hello," she says, her voice deep and rumbly. She sits down and yawns. "Have you seen a cave around here?" Nathaniel isn't sure what surprises him more, that a bear speaks his language, or that a bear can be lost. Nathaniel suggests that perhaps the bear is going the wrong way. She's moving down the hill toward the town of Lionwood. The bear agrees a town would be much too noisy. She doesn't understand how people stay awake all winter. "Do you have to hibernate?" Nathaniel asks. The bear explains that food is scarce in the winter snow, so she sleeps until spring. And she's not the only one. Her friend, the old groundhog, sleeps until the flowers bloom. And little hedgehog hibernates too, though she's a light sleeper. Then there's Mr. Skunk, but the less said about him, the better. The bear rubs her tired eyes. "The world changes in winter," she says. "So we change too. It's who we are." She yawns again. Her sleepy brain is slow today. She waves a paw, then turns around and ambles uphill, leaving a path in the snow wide enough for a wagon. As Nathaniel and Feather continue to ride south, Nathaniel thinks about what the bear said. Hibernating is part of who she is. Does that mean migration is part of who Feather is? Would Nathaniel be stopping his best friend from being fully herself? So bundled up in his thoughts, Nathaniel doesn't notice they have reached the valley floor. Farms spread out on both sides of the road, blanketed with snow. Up ahead, smoke floats in soft pillars above farmhouse chimneys. A blur of motion catches his eye. He gives a gentle tug on the reins, and Pinecone stops. Looking around, Nathaniel sees only the snowy fields. Feather nods her beak to the right, pointing out tracks in the snow. The tracks lead across the road and stop under a large rabbit. The rabbit is all white, except for the black tips of his ears. "Hello, Nathaniel," the rabbit says. "It's me, Snowshoe." And then Nathaniel recognizes the rabbit. He met Snowshoe last summer when visiting his friends in the North Woods. "But Snowshoe," Nathaniel says, "what happened to your brown fur? You're all white." Snowshoe looks down at himself as if admiring new clothes. He explains that he turns white every winter. It helps him blend into the snow and hide from hunters. And he's not the only one. Some weasels and foxes turn white too. But of course, they aren't exactly Snowshoe's friends. They're hunters, after all. Nathaniel wonders if Snowshoe has to turn white. Snowshoe bends one of his black-tipped ears. If he goes south where there's no snow, his fur might stay brown. But he likes changing colors. It's as if nature chooses him each winter to receive a new white coat, and each spring to receive a new brown one. It makes me happy, he says, like I'm part of nature in a special way. Nathaniel offers Snowshoe a handful of dried fruit. They talk some more. Then Snowshoe hops away. Between one hop and the next, he vanishes as if he melted into the white fields. The two best friends continue to ride south. The snow on the ground vanishes. Up ahead stands the green wall of the southern forest, and beyond that, the gray mountains. Nathaniel thinks about what Snowshoe said. The rabbit loves the changes of winter. Changing makes him feel special. Is that how migrating will make Feather feel? Is Nathaniel standing between his best friend and her happiness? They enter the forest in the early afternoon. The air is warmer, the trees greener and taller. Feather bobs her head and chirps. It's okay, Nathaniel says. We're almost there. Almost where? A voice calls. Nathaniel turns to see a scrub jay on a nearby branch. His blue head, blue wings, and blue tail feathers are all so smooth. His gray chest and white neck stretch forward. He looks like he's speeding through the air, though he's standing completely still. Nathaniel explains that they're looking for the warmest place on the island, hoping it's warm enough for a falcon in winter. The scrub jay nods, then flies off the branch and down to the road. He hops like he has springs in his knees and stops at the foot of a pine tree. He taps the ground with his beak and uncovers a dusty acorn. How, Nathaniel wonders, did the jay know an acorn was buried in that exact spot? Because I buried it, the scrub jay says. He explains how he collects acorns, nuts, and seeds in the summer and fall, and stores them for winter. Not that I need it, he admits. The winter doesn't get cold enough here. Food is everywhere. Nathaniel asks if the jay has to save for winter. The scrub jay grew up in the north, where the snow is deep. But snow or no snow, it's important work. Most of the acorns and seeds will be their food. But some will take root in the earth and stretch up into trees. Scrub jays help the forest grow, which in turn provides more food and places to nest. And scrub jays are not the only ones. Chickadees and red-bellied woodpeckers do the same. Work gives meaning to our lives, he says. And this is my work. Nathaniel offers the bird a handful of nuts. Then with a bright caw of thanks, the scrub jay flies away. Feather watches, bobbing her head eagerly. She chirps, then runs her beak through Nathaniel's hair. Just a little longer, Nathaniel says. As they ride on, Nathaniel considers what the scrub jay said. Collecting and storing food is his work, and his work gives meaning to his life. By stopping Feather from migrating, is Nathaniel preventing his best friend from finding her meaning? By late afternoon, they reach the southern mountains of Lionwood. Nathaniel looks up. Far above the peaks, a flock of geese move steadily through the sky. They honk as they pass, calling everyone below to follow them to warmer lands. And so it was that a boy and his falcon approached the end of their journey. Neither knew what that end would bring, and so their hearts felt as quiet and full as seeds in the earth. They ride through a mountain pass, and Feather grows more restless. She squeezes Nathaniel's shoulder through the padded coat, gently tugs his hair, and chirps like a small bird. Nathaniel's heart is just as full of questions. Though the journey has only taken one day, he feels like he has crossed a continent. It was winter, and now it's as warm as spring. And in between, 3 animals have shared their wisdom. It's like a fairy tale, he thinks. And just like in a fairy tale, Nathaniel's heart begins to change. It had been closed like a hand afraid to lose something precious. Now it opens, as if reluctantly returning something that never really belonged to him. Nathaniel reaches up to his shoulder and unties the leash. Feather leans forward and turns her head to look into his face. "It's time," he says, "to find out if this is far enough. If it's not, it's okay." He scratches her neck. "But if you must keep flying," he adds, "please come home when winter is over." Feather pinches his finger like a promise. Then she leaps from his shoulder, stretches her grayish-blue wings, and flies into the air with a hawk's joyful shout. She circles in the sky, surveying the earth. From the ground, Nathaniel sees Feather tilt her head in his direction. As if her wings are waving goodbye, she leans on the wind, glides over a ridge, and is gone. Nathaniel stares at the blank sky. His heart is empty and full at the same time. He feels as if he could laugh and cry, but he decides he doesn't want to think anymore. Though they have only traveled one day, he feels a year older, and maybe a year wiser too. And that wisdom is heavier than he expected. It's time to go home. He tugs on the reins to turn Pinecone around. But just then, he hears a familiar voice in the sky. Feather circles above. She calls again, then turns and flies back over the ridge. She wants us to follow her, Nathaniel says to Pinecone. So they follow, riding up the pass, through a narrow gap, and into a pine forest. A family of deer rest in the warm shade. A gaggle of snow geese peck at the ground. Nathaniel enters a large clearing that moves with tall grasses, bristly foxtails, and colorful wildflowers. The vast space is surrounded by the forest, which is surrounded by the mountains. It reminds him of the clearing back home, which is almost entirely enclosed by trees. Except that forest is covered in snow, and this forest is evergreen. Winter cannot reach it. An orange cloud of monarch butterflies tumbles over a clump of pink flowers. A small herd of elk graze lazily nearby. All these animals migrate south in winter. Some, like the deer and elk, can only go this far. But others, like the geese and butterflies, could keep going. Fly right off the island and across the sea. But they choose to stay. And to Nathaniel's delight, so has Feather. She glides down from the sky, skims over the trees and across the clearing. Nathaniel laughs as she lands on his shoulder. "Are you sure?" he asks, playfully tapping her beak. "Is this far enough? Can you be happy here?" Feather pinches his finger. Her eyes shine. That's all the answer Nathaniel needs. As Feather leaps back into the sky, Nathaniel unpacks his gear and makes camp. He'll spend the night and return in the morning. He can visit Feather any time. And of course, Feather can visit him too. Nathaniel looks up. The sun is setting. Feather floats in the purple sky. Images drift through Nathaniel's mind. His mom sewing a leather falconry glove. A bear who slept. A rabbit who changed color. A scrub jay who found meaning in his work. And a falcon who flew and is still flying now, with the day's last light on her wings. And so it was that a boy and a falcon traveled to the end of the land, and between letting go and flying away, they found the distance that satisfied both of their hearts.